Dedication, perseverance. Come on. If you wanna go there, prepare for warfare.
All right. Hey guys, it is Sunday, May 7th, and we're here to discuss a little bit of my story, rehashing eating disorders and talking about that. So let's first, before we get into this heavy subject, which is a lot of trigger warnings, so anyone out there that this is too much of a heavy topic to handle, you might want to go ahead and skip this one. So,
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about our week.
Yeah, this past week we had a pretty big week. Friday of the week before, we did an event out at Purchase Line for Cherish Kaufman. I think Riley Lee, Mr. Shingle was the principal. He put it on, helped or let us put it on. Miss Cheehee, Amanda Cheehee was a big part of it, and there was a bunch more people. But it was for a state SAD member, Cherish Kaufman, and it was a pretty cool event.
Yeah, it was,
For people that don't know what SAD is.
Student against drug driving.
and it was a student leadership conference, which was pretty phenomenal that a kid put this all together.
Yeah, and I said this online, but when she talked, she was better at it than we were. It was just unbelievable listening to her talk and the similarities too. I understand why she wanted us to do it too. And after she started talking, I was like, wow, she could be sitting here right now, which she will be soon.
Yes, the vulnerability piece that goes with sharing your story and the courage it takes to talk about the things that you struggle with. Watching her stand there and just confidently talking about her story. And it's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to talk about things that you think that like maybe someone's going to mock you or make fun of you. And it can be really uncomfortable. And I remember sitting on that stage thinking, oh my gosh, wonder what people are going to think of this. And I had to like breathe and remind myself, no matter what, like it may help someone more than anything.
It was such a weird experience because every single one of us has had that nightmare, like as an adult, that you're like going back to high school and you have to give a speech and you're not prepared for it and someone didn't show up and you have an extra half an hour of time to fill.
Mm-hmm.
And no, but like I said this too, it's like all I had to do was like take my shirt off and it would have been like the nightmare of all nightmares. But then when we got there, it was in the auditorium in front of about 60 or 80 people, but the kids that were there also chose to be there. So
Yes.
It wasn't the entire school. And I haven't spoken like that. The last time I did was at a midget football banquet when I was like 20. And some of the same audience, as in teachers, were there. So it was a little unique. That was the scariest moment of my life up. And then trying to do this, it was interesting. It was very therapeutic. I would have to say.
Did you have that thing? I kept thinking about Brene Brown when you forced me to sit on the stage while you talked.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and I would see like someone laughing or yawning, and I would be like, "Oh, they don't like us. They
I
hate us.
know.
Why don't they like us?" And then I kept thinking about Brene Brown, and she did a public speaking event, and at her event, afterwards, she went up to the person who basically was like, "I don't like you," and she's like, "Well, why don't you like me?" The guy's like, "I don't know, I just don't like you." And the guy's like, "You," and she was telling this to a colleague, and he's like, "You raised a roof for everybody else in the entire auditorium, but the one person that didn't like you found him."
Oh, I know, and like that would be the people we focused on. There was kids in the front row, kind of towards the right, and they were super interactive. They were shaking their heads, so I kind of looked at them a lot, and then it was kind of
Makes you
nice.
feel like you know what you're talking about.
Kind of, or they're just at least engaged. And then when I looked towards the back, it was like kind of dark, so I couldn't see anyways. And then I don't know. I had to do some last minute redrafts, so I just put bullet points on a piece of paper, and I couldn't tell you what I said. Like I remember very few things about what I actually said, so it was interesting. It was very interesting.
I think the coolest thing that we got to experience at that is talking to our former principal.
Yes.
Who, Jody Rainey, we want to thank you for supporting us and coming out. And it's funny when you don't realize how much people care about you until years later. And I remember I wasn't the greatest student in high school, probably because I went through a lot of the things that we're going to talk about. But I had an interaction with him where I thought he just hated me.
Yes.
And here he is, like showing up. He paid out of pocket, wrote a check for his members at Homer Center to come and watch his former students speak on stage. And he's like, I didn't want to miss this. I didn't want to miss this.
I've been working with him a little bit with it because he's the fire chief in Cherry Hill Township. and just in passing, just seeing him back and forth. And I know that I had a complicated relationship, not with him, because in 11th grade I'd quit basketball, and I never quit anything before, and I quit basketball. And the thing is, well, another friend of mine, kind of, we did it at the same time. I never came to him and had a conversation. I never went to him and was like, hey, I don't think this is for me, because it wasn't. I stand by my decision to quit. I just didn't like how I did it. And that's something I always kind of wanted to say to him, but he's never like held that against me.
Yeah.
And even in the same school year, I remember him having positive interactions with me, because I was always nervous about it. But yeah, he's done good things. He says a lot of things, and I think sometimes some of the stuff he says gets a little misinterpreted, because he's very upfront.
Yes.
My
Yeah.
very last year, obviously my senior year in school, and him and Mr. Price were both on my side. That was weird. You guys both picked up your drinks and drank at the same time.
Unison.
No, they were both on my side. I mean, I lived like an eighth of a mile out of the school district and still was able to go to our school because I went to school, I did the right things, I went to practice, got good grades and all that fun stuff. But had it not been for Mr. Price and Mr. Rainey, my senior year would have been just shit. My
Yeah.
senior
Yeah.
year would have started the shitty part of my life rather than college.
Yeah. I was kind of disappointed you weren't able to make it either, because you just did all this stuff and you just got your new place like the week before. And I thought, how much more ceremonial would it be for you to move out of my house and give a pseudo commencement speech to a high school that you graduated from, as this was kind of like a little rebirth for you out into the real world. But unfortunately, it just didn't happen. That's all.
We did a good spin off of it, though, like talking about how the power of inclusion works with, like having a good support system behind you, I think is really key to helping people stay sober, or even just people that struggle with depression, people that struggle with anxiety, having people constantly kind of keeping you in check and
But yeah,
accountable.
being isolated and being depressed and anxious and all of those things is never going to get anybody anywhere. And I've tried doing things by myself, and it never happened. I never did anything good by myself.
We went to the walk at IRMC.
Yeah, that was
the
May
the 4th.
May 4th.
And the doctor, I apologize, I forget his name, but he stood on the podium and he said one of the leading causes of death right now is loneliness, it's
Yeah.
isolation. And I thought that was incredible. That speaks to the power of inclusion, the power of being in a supportive community, whatever that looks like for you, whatever your community is. There are so many different avenues to find it. You just have to find the right niche. And I thought that was an incredible thing. And we're going to use that information to push for the things that we're trying to get done at the Rooster's Nest.
Yes.
All right, Liz, how was your week?
Long, still moving. I mean, we've got 3,000 square feet to fill. I mean, it's definitely full of stuff, but our walls are blue and yellow, and we're trying to paint all the walls. Jesse works 7 days a week. I work 5, usually 3 or 4 12-hour shifts a week, and then on top of that, a full 5-day week. But trying to do things in the time frame that we have to do things, we can't build a shelf in 3 hours that we have to build that shelf. But other than that, on Thursday last week, I got my teeth pulled.
Good.
All of them, every single one.
How's that feel?
Right now,
I'm just gonna forewarn you. I'm putting the donkey from Shrek on.
I
so
knew
I'll
you
tell
were. I knew you were gonna say something about a donkey, but
Hey,
no.
real quick, back to your time thing. You remember too. Take your house slow. Your house is gonna be there forever. Not everything has to be done this weekend.
Yeah. We since having off from like getting my teeth pulled, I've been able to put stuff away and put things where they need to go, clear out a couple different rooms. But yeah, getting my teeth pulled was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Good.
They didn't have to break anything off. None of my teeth broke off. No stitches. No, nothing like that. So
Good. With your history of addiction, what did you do as far as pain management?
they gave me a prescription of 2. The prescription is called Halcyon, and whenever I got there, I had to get there an hour early and take one of those pills, and I did. And about 35 minutes in, I was asleep, like in the waiting room, pretty much asleep. And that's all I needed, except for Novocaine, of course.
Yeah.
But that was it.
Good. And then post teeth pull, you
Ibuprofen. Ibuprofen and antibiotic because they said I had an abscess, which was weird because usually when you have an abscess, but for whatever reason, they didn't.
It's probably a good idea to get antibiotic.
Oh yeah,
regardless, just
I
to-
think most people do. And then they gave me this mouthwash stuff that I have to wash my mouth out with twice a week, of course, or twice a day. I mean, and I'm gonna go back to work today.
Real quick too, Meg Dog, my other half, Megan's her birthday today. Happy birthday, Meg.
Happy birthday, Max.
Yeah. All right, you guys are. I'm much taller than these two, but they made me sit in a little chair, so I'm in between here. I feel a little
Okay, you're
weird.
just a level.
So yes, you got to bring me down to your level. Anyways, go on.
My week was this weekend. We took the drop ceilings down from the gym, so we extended the ceiling. So we were there from 10 o'clock yesterday till 7:30 at night. And after I'm done here, I'm going back and I'm gonna finish painting, and hopefully get some extra stuff done. So
Good.
that's kind of, but it looks a lot better and the space looks so much bigger. So
Yeah.
excited for
Nice.
Good. All right, you are ready to roll?
that. All right, let's get vulnerable.
Let's do it.
All right. So we're talking about eating disorders. And just throwing some statistics out there that eating disorders affect about 9% of the U.S. population, and less than 6% that have eating disorders are medically underweight. Meaning, when you look at people that are struggling with these eating disorders, you really wouldn't know unless they told you. And it's one of the deadliest mental illnesses, second only to opiate abuse, which I thought was a pretty huge number.
Okay.
And 10,200 deaths occur each year,
Wow.
which is one death every 52 minutes.
That's a lot.
That's a heavy number.
That's a huge number, like
yeah.
9%, because I think we talked bipolar and some of that stuff only affects about 4%. A lot of the stuff only affects about 4%, which I think bipolar and so a lot of mental illnesses are chemical imbalances.
Mhm.
But I'm curious to see how this shakes out. Like, is an eating disorder a chemical imbalance? Is it nature versus nurture? Is it more nurture?
So it goes with a lot of different things. Some of it's cultural. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but some of it's cultural. Some of it is learned behavior. Some
Yes.
of it is
The research I was doing, and I wrote down on purpose, like it talks about the brain structure and the chemicals in your brain. I can't obviously go back to it because I'm recording on my phone, but it talked about serotonin and dopamine and the way that they interact with each other. It's
Okay.
it's not the same as somebody that's quote
Right.
unquote normal.
Normie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, neurotypical. Wait, no, that's not it. That's something different. Go on. Yeah.
Okay. So 42% of first to third graders want to be thinner. And when we're thinking about those numbers, first to third grade, those are what, six to 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
81% of 10-year-olds are afraid of being fat.
81% of 10-year-olds.
Yes.
Wow.
Holy shit.
46% of 9 to 11-year-old children are sometimes on diet. And I remember being
Due to themselves or their parents?
Could be both. And I would assume mostly for kids trying to regulate their weight on their own.
Yeah, and we talked about this before. There's no such thing as a diet, right? I mean, there's definitely such thing as a diet. But if you want to lose weight, it's not a diet you go on. You have to go on a little bit of a lifestyle change, eat a little bit different. Because if you try to diet,
If you want it to be sustainable, you have to change
Yeah,
your
you have to
lifestyle,
change your
for
life.
sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And 35 to 57% of teens engage in crash dieting, fasting, self-induced vomiting, diet pills, or laxatives.
Wow.
57% is a huge number, and I know that I definitely fell into that category in my teen years for a lot of those things on that list. And a college campus study found that 91% of women on campus were dieting. 91%, so that's like pretty much the whole college females are dieting.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what athletes take a look and see what athletes are like when it comes to dieting, because I know guys with wrestling, that's a huge one. They're wearing the sweatsuits and that
You have to be at a certain weight to be in a certain category. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about gymnasts, especially competitive gymnasts, they're really forced to try to slow down puberty for as long as possible. Same with a lot of ballerinas. You notice they're always typically very thin and they don't have breasts. They try to push back hitting puberty for as long as possible and staying as thin as possible.
Do you care if I read this? This is you might actually have some of this come up, but this is signs and symptoms of bulimia in athletes.
Yeah, I mean, we have that, but you can read it if you
Nah,
want.
go ahead. You got it. We'll get to it later.
Okay.
That was called a tease. We'll get to it.
Jesus.
So we talk about the perfect body. We all have an image of what our perfect body should look like.
Mhm.
It's in our brains, and some of our goals are attainable and some of them are not. So growing up, I was a dancer. I was a ballerina. Best friend was 5'7". I'm 5'2". That just, my body could never be hers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I constantly compared my body to her. She had an hourglass shape, long legs, looked exactly like what you see on TV when you watch ballerinas. And comparing yourself to that,
Mhm.
there's nothing you can do to change it.
Yeah, you
There's
got to
nothing you
take
can
her.
do to change that.
You got to take her down a peg or two.
Yeah,
if you
to
can't
break
get
her
her,
ankles,
gotta
you know.
get-
But like if
I'm just
someone,
fucking with
but
you.
if someone does come over and they say, "Hey, how do you have this body type?" and I'm very honest with them, I don't say, "You get this by doing this, this, and this. Come 5 days a week, and you'll have my body in 3 months." Like, this is 12 years of consistency, showing up, putting in the work, and doing what I do. Like, I don't sell any fast track programs. Like, this is what we do, and this is how we do it, and it all comes down to consistency.
Well, and it comes down to your body type too, because if the three of us could work out exactly the same, and we would look differently. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't.
To a certain degree, though, because I remember at one point, I mean, different body types, yes.
Yeah.
But I remember growing up and people telling me that I was going to be chubby all my life because all the women in my mom's family are heavier. And I would never have abs because they're all heavier.
Was that the driving
And-
factor for you to start
No.
CrossFit?
No, not at all. I started CrossFit because I was doing ballet or I was doing Zumba, and it just wasn't giving me the results that I wanted. And then when I tried to start lifting, I was like, I'm not very strong.
Oh yeah, you said about benching.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then
Mhm.
from that it moved over into something else. So you can't compare yourself to other bodies because we're all at different levels and all at different stages. So that was something that my younger self did not know.
Mhm.
And I took that where I would starve myself. I would over exercise. I would walk for hours. And I remember being as young as 12, just going on walks for miles and miles and miles, like crying in front of the mirror. And growing up in the 90s and 2000s, that's when it was cool to wear those really, really, really low jeans.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
Everybody had back fat, love handles, hip, whatever the hell you want to call them. Everybody did.
Because you couldn't wear those jeans where they looked good unless you were literally a tiny, tiny human.
Person,
Like,
yes.
there was just no way that they would look right where you didn't look like you had love handles. And two, when you're going through these stages of puberty and your body is changing, like sometimes you go through that change where you're a little bit heavier for a while, and then your body starts to catch up and you start to thin out again. And unfortunately, during that time, like I was in dancing uniforms, it became 2 pieces, crop tops, leotards, like full body leotards. Those don't look good on really anybody, but
Yeah,
those are the
no.
kind of things that were put in. And I remember just hating it, like hating my body. And then when I finally got into high school, that's when things took a big turn for me. And I think for a lot of kids, this is when it really starts to come out because there's so much emphasis as a teenage girl, especially put on your body image, that when someone shows you that there's a shortcut available, you think you're going to take it. That was just someone showing me how to purge.
Yes,
became a catalyst of moving in a very unhealthy direction.
that's pretty interesting too. Well, when you learned, like, what was your instant reaction to whenever you learned you could do that?
So I remember, and it was really weird. So I was standing inside of those high school walls, right? I was standing on the stage, and all I could think about was, this is where I learned how to purge my food. This is where my eating disorder took off, was right in these walls. And now I'm standing up here telling people how to not fall into this trap.
Mm-hmm.
And it was empowering, but also scary as hell because that could have easily been a spiral for those old feelings to come back, me to fall into that pattern loop again
Yeah.
and start down the same route. So I think my first reaction was, wow, like I can have the body I want and not have to change anything in my life. This is easy, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a cheat code.
And the person that talked to me about this, like she had been doing it for a long time. Like this was something that it was super easy for her to do, and she didn't feel like it was a health issue. It wasn't an issue. And you kind of have this voice in your head when you start, and it's almost like a voice telling you that, like, yeah, you're doing this, but it's different. You don't have an eating disorder. Like this isn't an eating disorder. You just do it once in a while. Well, it became for me. I'm going to get pretty vulnerable here. It's something I really have never talked about, but it got to the point for me where I was getting up from the table for meals and getting sick, going back. Nobody knew. Like, I remember a couple times.
Did you think nobody knew, or nobody did? Nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
Okay.
If my mom's a pretty vocal person, she would have said something.
Benefit of a big family too is
Correct. And a chaotic family. We always had stuff going on, so no one knew. And it's super isolating. So I would, get up from the table, and if there were times where I was panicking that I ate too much, like I would get sick in my room, and I would hide it until literally the next day when no one would know.
What would you
And
do
I would
with
get
it?
rid of
Like
it.
how would you do?
Plastic bags, and I would dispose of them. That's how bad it was for a really long time. And this was all in high school. Like I was in my adult life, I have never been to that point.
Do you mind me asking how long is a long time?
In high school, probably from 10th grade on. And so that was something I think that, no one saw. No one, I mean, you can hide a lot of things in your life. Like you can hide a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that was something that I definitely when I was standing up, these are memories. When I text you and I said, when I left, I brought back a lot of memories that were really hard for me because you block that stuff out once you kind of go through the trauma, and that's stuff that I remembered. And this targets people that have a low self-esteem. I remember at 8 years old sitting at the dinner table and my dad telling me that I was chubby, and I locked myself into the bathroom and I bawled inside of that bathroom for like 2 hours. We have one bathroom in the house. I walked.
You were locked
I was
inside
like,
of it.
well, you deserve this.
Yeah.
And they were super, like, they didn't think it was that big of a deal. But that's at that point in my life, and I'm sure my dad didn't mean it to hurt me, but that was a point in my life where I associated my worth with my weight.
That's it's funny too because they're innocent jokes, but sometimes you just got to be selective, and I think you got to know your kid, your niece, your nephew, who you can quote unquote pick on. Because if someone had told me I was too skinny or too chubby, I got that all the time about how skinny I was. And it never had any.
It's so much different for women though. Like if my dad would have said that to me, I probably would have been able to smack him and get away with it.
Yeah.
But still, like that would definitely make me feel like I wasn't good enough, especially my dad being the kind of cheerleader he was for me.
That's
if he
true.
would have come off saying like, well, you're not doing this good enough, which he did, and he coached me to be better at the things that he said you weren't good enough at, but there was never one time I can ever remember him commenting on my weight or anything like that.
Yeah, and I do know young men now men now that have struggled with that stuff in the past and have had eating disorders and whatnot, but with men they stay a little bit more hidden, and it's funny because you can make fun of a guy for 12 things, but number 13 might really get him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
just talking about some of the different eating disorders, anorexia is where you avoid, you restrict, or you eat really small quantities of only certain foods. So a lot of times you'll see them not eating any kind of carbohydrates. and shuffling food around on their plate to make it
Ooh,
look
good
like
call.
they
Uh-huh.
ate.
Sliding some to the dog.
Yes,
Mhm.
and they look emaciated to us, but they're unable to update their mental image. So when they look in the mirror, they still see a heavy person,
Yeah.
even though what we see is typically skin and bones.
Yeah, remember, memory isn't like it's not a photograph. It's more like a Word document. So every time you pull up a memory, you can edit it,
Mhm.
so to speak. And for whatever reason, and it's hard for me to even fathom, but whenever someone sees themselves in the mirror and they're, 20 pounds over or underweight, for them to not be able to see what's really there, it's mind-boggling.
It
to me.
is.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
is, absolutely. And you talk about bulimia, that's eating unusually large amounts of food, feeling a lack of control, self loathing, followed by vomiting, laxatives, fasting, excessive exercise, or a combination. Um, and again, people that are affected by this might be slightly under, normal, or even overweight. So
Mhm.
a lot of people that struggle with this eating disorder, you wouldn't know.
And I'm going to throw this stuff up on the screen just for the record too. So
And binge eating is it is the most common eating disorder in the United States. And it's where you eat large amounts of food, you lose control over the intake, and often people that struggle with this disorder are overweight or obese. And symptoms for this is eating when you're full or you're not hungry, eating fast during binge episodes, eating alone or in secret, frequent dieting without weight loss, um, and it's a perpetual occurrence. This isn't just like eating really a big meal on a holiday and feeling terrible about yourself
When,
afterwards.
so, when you're
Like-
when you're exercising, you're like, oh, I don't see a difference. I don't see a difference. So when you're binging and purging and binging and purging, and I don't see a difference. I don't see a difference.
You do though, like you sometimes you do see a weight loss or you see the number go down on the scale, and a lot of times you're combining both.
Okay.
So everything you're eating, you're throwing up, and you're still exercising, you are going to lose a little bit of weight. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get to an underweight
Mm-hmm.
where you're under your BMI, where you're not healthy.
Yeah. You could work out for weeks and weeks and weeks and have one bad weekend, and it feels like you're way back to where you started.
Yes.
And that could be a point where people it like stops. But
I think a lot of that too
3 weeks. I mean,
is mental, because you
Yes,
have
that's
to
what I
eat
was-
close to 6,000 calories to really like start to gain weight over what you're supposed to burn throughout your day.
6,000.
3,000.
Okay,
3,000. So you have to eat around 6,000 calories to add on weight.
Yes,
is what I'm
correct.
saying.
I got you.
So I think that for a lot of people, like you have one bad weekend, it doesn't mean that you've completely lost everything. You should probably just stop exercising and lay on your couch forever.
right.
But that's what we get into our head, right? Like, oh my God, I ate pizza yesterday. Like I ate sandwiches and pizza yesterday working on the gym, and I had to correct that thought pattern, because I would immediately be like, oh my God, I ate pizza this weekend.
Oh man.
Not pizza.
What am I gonna do?
Yeah, crazy.
And I mean, you can laugh at that, but
No,
that's
I
exactly
know,
what
I know.
happened
I'm
in my
sorry,
brain, and
sorry.
it was awful, to the point where like I wouldn't eat pizza, or if I did, I would immediately panic, and I would be thinking like, how do I get rid of this?
Yeah.
How do I get rid of this? It's going to make me fat. It's going to make me gross, and it took a lot of turning and a lot of therapy and changing your thought process.
What you said, a lot of therapy. What was it? Pattern recognition and like thought replacement.
For me, a lot of it was finding self-confidence, finding self-worth, and disassociating my worth from my weight. I thought I wouldn't be worth anything. I wouldn't be a good coach. I wouldn't be a good, beautiful wife, girlfriend, whatever it was, if I didn't look perfect. If I didn't have the body type that in my mind was ideal.
And which is wild because
this is a me problem, not
yes.
anybody else in my
Yeah.
life. Like this is
Because
on
perfect
me.
to you and perfect to somebody else is
It's completely different.
Yeah.
Correct. Talking about just who it affects, it can affect anybody. Any background, any body weight, any gender, and it mostly comes out in your teen years. And it's caused by a complex interactions of genetic, biological, behavioral, psychological, and social factors. And the most common people that are going to get this are people that are sensitive. They're prone to anxiety. They have high self-standards. So set their standards really high for themselves and what they need to achieve, but they have poor self confidence. And a couple factors that I thought were pretty interesting: very high risk in identical twins.
Ooh.
So, and I
That
remember
makes
going
sense.
to school with a couple identical twins, and I remember them seeming to struggle with food. And you think that you have someone who looks exactly like you, that you have to
Yep.
constantly
Compare yourself.
compete with. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
This was interesting to me. Those with parents that chronically diet or struggle with their own food and body image issues typically have children that also do the same.
Well, that's learned behavior.
And
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah.
And another one is parenting patterns of enmeshment, avoiding conflicts, high expectations are connected to anorexia specifically. An alcoholic parent, high levels of family drama and depression in a mother are associated with bulimia. Other teasing and shaming by peers or adults, having a friend with an eating disorder.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And for a lot of people, those who've suffered with abuse, neglect, childhood abandonment, and the risk is especially high for those that are sexually abused.
Mhm.
And
Is it like control? Is that one of the things we've established is control is
yes, when your life is spiraling out of control, this is the one thing. I mean, for me personally, it was the one thing that I had control over. And like I have like lists here of stuff is like, cycles of stress. When I had really stressful things happening at home, at school, and my relationships, death, that is when it would just be like this voice being like, oh, I'm here for you. Like, I'm here for you.
Mhm.
And it's-
This is
and
the
it's-
one thing that you have.
It's just
Yep.
the same as
and
a
it's
drug.
instant and it's yes.
It's
Yes.
the same as
I
a drug.
when I was
Yeah.
when I was selling cars, I Meg used to pack me lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And she stopped packing my lunch once she found out that I was also buying lunch. So I would leave. I'd eat my lunch she packed for me at 10:30, and then at 12 I would buy lunch for the rest of the guys. I can specifically remember when I was at the last place I worked, they would buy us pizza every Saturday, and the titles for the cars were in the back office. So every single time I would send a customer on a test drive, or I'd buzz past that to grab some paperwork, and I'd always snag a slice of pizza. Always, always, always.
Every time you walk past.
Every single time I walk past,
Jeez.
I'd eat 13 slices of pizza in a day. And I realized I
That's
was
a lot.
playing Elden Ring out here last year, and it was a super complicated game. And I would have snacks in front of me every single time I would die on the game. I'd eat something, and finally at some point I put it together. I'm like, you're just doing this because you're frustrated.
Yeah, or you feel bad about yourself because
Yeah,
you keep
because
dying.
you're just frustrated, so you eat so much, and it's such a minor thing. But like for me able to put that together, I've noticed, and I've been able to change some of my dietary stuff. It's kind of like if you don't want to get wet, don't go to the pool.
Yeah.
Stop putting food
Yeah.
right in front of
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially TV. Anytime you're sitting at the TV snacking,
Yes.
So easy
Yeah.
to just
Yeah.
finish a whole bowl of popcorn. Like, where did I just go?
mindlessly eating.
Mhm.
All right, well, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll get back. All right, guys, we're back after a break we didn't take. So let's go.
God.
I hate you guys.
Just talking about personality styles that are affected, I thought this was pretty interesting. Borderline personality, difficult managing and tolerating emotions, avoidance. Avoids emotions
She's getting
and
spirit
mistrust.
fingers.
Yeah, it's me. And mistrust others. And this happens for a lot of people. They say narcissistic, but I think it's just people that are perfectionists.
I think a lot of people don't know what you mean when you say borderline personality disorder.
Ooh,
BPD is, it's saying that people that they don't know how to tolerate their emotions,
Yes.
and they don't know how to manage them.
A lot of people take it as they have like 800 different personalities.
No,
you
so
know?
they're kind of like go off the rails when they're upset, and you're a good person to them until you're not, and then you're like the enemy.
borderline personality disorder, also called BPD, emotional dysregulation disorder, a mental disorder characterized by unstable moods, behavior, and relationships.
Mhm.
The cause of borderline personality isn't well understood. Diagnosis made based on symptoms. Most of the time, it's someone Justin's dating. That's what it
That's
said.
just what it says.
Yeah,
Okay.
Ellen, yeah.
So a trait seen in those with eating disorders, lack of confidence, no surprise there, needing to please others, so people pleaser, check, and perfectionism, also double, triple check for me on all of those things.
Cool. Good.
So what can we do to help people that we love, that we know are struggling with this? Listen to them, create a space where they feel comfortable coming to you with bullying, intrusive thoughts, self-judgment. This is a big one, and this is something that I comment I work on a lot at the gym, is instead of commenting on people on their weight loss, I make sure that I bring up other things about them, something about their character, their work ethic, their team spirit, things that actually matter, like, hey, you look really strong, you've been so committed, I'm so proud of you, instead of saying, hey, it looks like you're getting really skinny, because that is associating their worth with their weight, and that doesn't really help anybody. And as nutrition coach, something that I've been since 2018 is part of my journey of getting healthy and learning about food and learning about proper intake, seeing fuel for my body is I did in 2015, I started working with a nutrition coach, and it actually kind of took me backwards a little bit, because she had me weighing myself and sending progress photos every day.
Ooh.
And
Oh boy.
Every day.
or every week.
Okay.
And it got to the point where I was weighing myself daily,
Yeah.
but progress photos every week, and that became too much. I got obsessed with the number that I heard, and I was trying to. When I sat back, I was like, "Where did I hear this number that I want to weigh? Where did that come from?" It was high school.
High school.
It was high school.
Oh wow.
And it's totally
Okay.
arbitrary number.
Yeah, I was like a 20-some to 30-year-old woman. Why the hell do I need to weigh 125 pounds in my brain?
Yeah.
So that's something that I had to,
Especially women's
Fine.
bodies change. I mean, everyone does. I know, I didn't start putting on weight until I got a little bit older, but women's bodies change like from 20 to 25 as much as they do the
and
previous
in
10.
30s,
Yeah.
it's a roller coaster.
It definitely is. It says to that for sure.
So, like, if you know someone that is like weighing themselves daily and measuring themselves daily, talk to them about it and just be like, hey, I don't really think that in a non-judgmental way. Like, hey, are you sure that ask questions? Are you sure it's healthy? Are you sure that that's not causing you some like mental distress? Because for me, it definitely did. Pay attention to what you're consuming. Like, geez, everywhere you look, it's like, let's sculpt this, let's burn the fat off of this. Like, it's constantly, we're fed constantly that we're not good enough. It's everywhere you look. And
Can we talk about the lunches we saw the other day?
well, we'll go right into the next one.
Okay.
Steering clear of fad diets and fat loss gimmicks. So we were somewhere that we were served lunch, and the lunch that we had was, I had a crustless peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a cheese stick, a little cup of oranges, and 2 honey graham goldfish.
One cheese stick?
Yeah.
So
there
a
was-
mozzarella stick.
No, a
Like a string cheese.
string cheese.
Okay.
So that was the entire lunch that was served. There was no protein in there. It was high carb, high fat.
I was served a bowl of mac and cheese. The mac and cheese was about the size of my fist, and one single breadstick that I don't even know what.
But
It
you
was
had
like a
sauce
wheat-
on the side for your vegetable.
Well, I didn't have a vegetable. Oh yeah, the sauce was my vegetable, and I had to dip my mac and cheese and my breadstick into the sauce just to like get anything out of it.
So in that there
Wow.
was
It was
zero.
wild. It was gross.
Protein.
Zero protein. Not anything. It wasn't even an option because I was like, I thought it was like Chipotle where it was like, hey, pick like whatever your beef chicken, and they just didn't.
Yes.
And it was the wildest thing. I just don't understand.
Wow.
Protein is the building block for our DNA.
Yeah.
You need protein in your diet, and just to see that was something that's being served, fats and carbs, and no protein whatsoever.
Two
It was
people that
hard.
may or may not be growing at the current time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stay away from like the fad diets. Anytime that you see that like guaranteed to lose 10 pounds in 3 weeks, it's bullshit. If there was a fast track for weight loss, everybody would be thin.
Yep.
It's not possible. And I know from experience, a lot of these diets can cause long-term damage to your metabolic function. So don't do it. Just reach out to somebody. If you want to lose weight, it has to be slow and sustainable. You didn't gain weight overnight, you're not going to lose it overnight.
Even if it feels like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you see someone and you witness unusual eating behaviors, frequent trips to the bathroom after they're eating, or just constantly sliding their food around their plate, not really eating anything, you have to ask questions and reach out to people if you think that they need to speak to somebody.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people suffer in silence. It's something that's so embarrassing to talk about. And it's people only know that you care if you let them know. Because a lot of times they think
Yes.
this is my problem, this is a me problem. And when I did the research, when I really sat down and I thought it, like, read stuff to talk about when we did our speeches and we did our presentation, like, I was a poster child for an eating disorder. I'm an avoidant personality. I hate conflict. I hate talking about my feelings. Sometimes I don't even recognize my feelings at all. And it's something I work on really, really, really hard.
It's
And
really
therapy.
important recognizing
Yes.
your feelings, because I'm the same way. I just don't realize stuff bothers me until it's like, oh shit.
Yes, and it's
Yeah.
like over the rim, right?
Yeah.
Alcoholism and depression run in my family. And instead of ever asking for my needs to be met, I stuffed them down or I felt shame for having them. In times of chaos, it was one of the controls that I had. So, and I noticed, like, into my adult life when my best friend was killed, I could not ask for help, and I didn't know how. Like, I didn't know how to say, like, hey, I'm really struggling right now. It was the only thing that kind of kept my emotions in check, kept me from, like, breaking down. And, when I went through a divorce, like, I binge ate so much. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
I bet.
so unhealthy. And, your whole life uproots whenever you go through a divorce and you have to move and find a different place to live. And then you're alone. You have all this time where you're just alone. And it's so isolating because, like, I wouldn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to be at home alone doing this thing. And
You wanted to wallow in your own misery.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I did
That's-
with
yeah.
with terrible food and terrible life choices. And then I remember, like, crying then and feeling even worse. Like, why would anyone ever want me to be a coach to them? Why would anyone ever want me to? Why did anyone ever listen to me? Like, I'm an imposter. Look what I'm doing. Look what I'm doing in my silence. And then when I stopped being a victim and I started to say, who else could be better to teach people than someone who's lived it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Man,
And
That's
someone who can
experience.
say, I can do this. If I can do this, you can change
Experience is the best teacher. It
When-
really is.
When her and I split, I remember one night taking barbecue chicken and a glass of scotch to bed with me. Not that I was going to bed, but it was one of
Yes.
those ones where I
Went to
hung
your
out.
room. whatever
Yeah,
it
and
is.
I sat and I thought, this is, you need this sometimes.
Yes.
You need this. But then after, like, the whiskey step kept sticking around, it was like, okay, once, twice, okay, but this little pattern, that's whenever you know you got to get shit taken
Yes.
care of.
Mhm.
And I mean, your willpower can only take you for so long. Like, I
No.
remember, and I was just telling Meg this when she came in the room, we were talking. I remember looking at myself in the mirror, crying and saying, never again, never again, never again, never again. And then I'd break the promise to myself. And I remember coming home one day and I was sitting in front of the mirror and I was doing the exercises where you're, like, building confidence and you're talking
Sure.
to yourself in the mirror. And I
Mhm.
said, would you keep a best friend that constantly broke promises to you? And when I did that, I was like, so why do you allow yourself to do it? That's when I started to really, like, take control of my life back. I had to listen to books. I had to start going to therapy because this was kind of my control over my trauma in my life. Instead of dealing with the trauma, I was turning to this and dealing with all of my struggles with an eating disorder, which only make it worse. Through therapy and becoming a nutrition coach, learning about having an education on nutrition, I had to come up with healthy coping mechanisms for stress. Had I not done that, I'd still be sitting in the same place because nothing changes if we're not willing to change.
Nothing changes if nothing changes.
And the big one for me was regulating my nervous system.
Ooh.
Learning how to take breathing patterns, calming myself when things go out of control and not immediately becoming a giant ball of stress was life-changing for me. If I let my nervous system get riled up, like, it was really hard to come back down. That was a big teacher for me. And you think about willpower,
Like,
right?
perfectionist too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Willpower is, like, if you only trained your biceps all day, every day, eventually it's going to break, right?
Mhm.
It's the same thing with willpower because people, like, get mad at themselves and they say, well, I can't lose weight because I have no willpower. It has nothing to do with willpower. It's your atmosphere.
Mhm.
Are you constantly surrounding yourself in a situation where you're set up to fail.
Yeah.
If you are trying to get your weight under control and you have cookies and candy bars around you all the time, it's only for so long that you can withhold that until you break.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
imagine a heroin addict sitting in a room with it.
Well, and this is
yeah.
that's a hard thing about eating disorders is because if you're like I have that actually wrote down, it's hard to escape. Because if you're an alcoholic, you don't go to a bar, you don't associate with people that are drinking. If you're an addict, you find a different friend group, you don't hang around people that do drugs. You have to eat every single day.
Yeah, imagine,
So you can't just avoid the situation. You have to handle it.
Imagine if you were an alcoholic, but you had to drink three times a day. It's like you have to eat 3 times a day.
You do?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, the therapy is being forced to eat 3 times a day and have snacks. Like that part of the therapy is them being on a meal plan and
like traditional routine.
Yes. Yeah. So different strategies talk about that worked for me is not labeling foods as good and bad. If I want to have, pizza on a weekend, I can do it. And I just pick up eating the healthy lifestyle that I typically live. I can have a pizza on the weekend. I eat salads and I eat healthy vegetables all week long. So having a pizza isn't going to wreck my life.
Yeah, I heard someone say one time that drugs don't have a moral compass either. Cocaine is cocaine. It's not good, bad, and different. There's it doesn't have. It's what you do with it.
It's bad.
So
I mean, the outcome of any drug is bad.
But the drug itself doesn't have a moral compass.
Yeah.
This drug is just what it is.
I understand what you're saying.
bad,
Same with
different.
that's what you're saying about food is like
Yeah.
ice cream isn't good or bad, but it's if you're eating it as a treat once a week, it's not terrible. But if you're eating it every single day, it can become not a healthy habit. Seeing food as fuel for my body and also a thing for pleasure and connection. When I was in Italy, we sat down and had meals like 2 hour.
Yeah.
2 hours where you just sat and you talked and it was like a long process. It was amazing. It was amazing watching everybody connect over food and you ate oils and breads and all of these things. It was healthy. Like it felt healthy. It was a healthy way to connect with people. Exercise. I use it as stress relief. I do it for my mental health. I do it as a way to, thank my body for the things that it can do instead of just what it looks like. I don't use it as punishment for overeating. I think one of the biggest things for me is being in a community of people that love and celebrate all different body types. And CrossFit is probably the best decision I've ever made in my life for a lot of reasons, but helping heal my eating disorder was probably the biggest. And I mean, just that you guys know the community that we have in the gym. Nobody comments on your weight. Everybody dresses with what they want to wear, and everyone's super loving of each other.
Supportive.
And there's just no negativity. Even even the people that aren't uber positive, they're definitely not negative. Yeah. The most we get is Big Kev making fun of everybody.
But it's in like in a fun way, like everyone teases and having that.
Actually, Dina's worse. His life. She's probably the meanest one.
But it's such a good thing because no one comments on people's bodies, and other than like, wow, look how heavy you're lifting, look what you're doing, and I think that's an amazing tool that we need to do more often in our everyday life too. How many times have you ran into someone and be like, oh, you look great, you look so thin, and it's like, how about you look healthy? Yeah. Hey, you look really healthy, man. I love what you're doing. I see your pictures at the gym. You look committed. I love that.
Definitely feels a lot better to hear it that way.
Yes.
Oh, well, you look skinny. You're not fat with all that. Like.
Yeah, Chase Upton's running the Pittsburgh Marathon today, and he's one of those people that I can tell even if I have a bad workout, he'll maybe notice it and he'll be like, "Hey, good job." Yeah. And it's funny because sometimes you need told good job when you're doing bad, like having a bad workout more than you'd recognize when you have a good one.
And that's why he's on the accountability team leader. Yeah.
I noticed for working some of these marathons and 5Ks and whatnot with ServPro, we usually water sponsor them. Man, there's different shapes, different sizes, different ages, 70, 80 years old, kids, 12, 14 years old running marathons. And it's being healthy. Like you're healthy might not be super skinny. You're healthy might not be, it might be 30, 40 pounds like overweight in the traditional side. If you look at those BMI indexes, whenever you go to a doctor, it says that 5'11", I should be 160 pounds.
Oh, I'm overweight.
Yeah,
And my
all
doctor
that
started. My
stuff.
doctor
Overweight.
laughed. He goes, "It says I should be talking to you about your weight." He's like, "I can see your abs. You're fine." And we were laughing about it because he's like, "That's ridiculous. I don't know why they haven't updated
Yeah.
that."
Wow.
Wow.
And this is a big one. When you're feeling down and you're feeling low and your self-worth is already low, I had to start realizing that, like, when I'm looking in the mirror and I'm having a day where I'm feeling bad about my body, typically the mirror is going to lie to me. It's going to tell me that I look fat and everything that I wear, and I have to, like, not let that get in my head. Those distortions are going to happen. They happen for me, and I have to move on. I can't sit and fixate on them. That took me a long time to do. So on days where like I'll put something on and I'm like feeling down, just having one of those days, I just like, all right, let's put on sweatpants and let's go. And instead of being miserable and hating everything, and I just go about life.
Yeah.
And disassociating your self-worth from your appearance is a really hard thing to do. I know, because we see every single day on social media the perfect body, but no one tells you that they pose like this like 800 times
Oh,
different
yeah.
angles
Yeah,
to get that
it to
look.
be perfect. Yeah.
Yes. So we are comparing ourselves to things that take a lot of time for people to make.
I would say something I want to bring up. I know my first 2 weeks doing CrossFit, and even like some of the workouts we did when they were few and far between, I felt terrible about like my shape and the abilities and what I had. Like I remember, doing wall crawls or whatever. I'm upside down and I can barely do any of them, and it was really, really discouraging at 1st. Whenever you try to work out, because you just feel like you can't do it. Just get through that. Get through that, muscle through that, and that's might be something that you have to have willpower for.
And that, and the right amount of people. The right
Yes,
people.
yeah, and had it not been
Yes.
for you guys, I probably I don't know. I don't
Because
know
if
what
you
I
don't
would've
have
done,
if you don't have people that are like, hey, you're doing great. I know it's hard right now, but you're doing awesome. Just show up tomorrow.
yeah,
Then that's when people fall off and they're
And
like,
it's not
I'm
even
not
about
good
going
enough.
to the gym. It's about anything in life.
Yeah.
You know?
no, you're 100% right.
The last thing I can say is I had to start focusing inward, and what really worked for me is I established core values. I worked on aligning my words with my actions, and I started living a life of service by helping others. I worked on becoming a good person. I pride myself on being a good friend and becoming an ally for those that are struggling. Those are the things that truly matter. When we're done here on this earth, people aren't going to remember us for our number on the scale. They're going to remember you for how you made them feel and the light that you brought into the world. Those are the things that actually matter. The size of your body isn't. And I can't stress that enough. And when I do self-work and I think back and I look back at my younger self and I tell her that as a way of healing. You talk about inner child healing, and that was a big one. I associated my worth with my weight, and I was always so much more than that.
Good.
And that's all I got.
That's all we got. That was good. That was good. I'm proud of you, Trista.
Yes,
Thanks.
me
That
too.
was not easy to share. That's a lot of hard stuff to share.
Yeah, we covered this one other time, but it's nice to get a refresher, and also too, there's a lot of new people that listen to us that needed to get to know like you a little bit better.
And now
too,
there's
so.
better audio content, and we're
Yes.
not hearing birds chirping and
That is
dogs
right.
barking.
We're very loud. Yes, and we're so much more charming than we were before.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's pretty much it for this week. We had, I think we had a pretty productive couple weeks. We've all been super busy, and it's nice to get back on schedule. And you guys are doing great, so appreciate that.
All right.
All right.
That's it.
Yep.
Nothing. You don't have any final words?
Nope.
Just sit there with your teeth in your mouth.
I will. Don't you worry. They ain't going anywhere.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Love you guys.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Go outside.